What if everything you see, touch, and call real isn't something you attract, but something you code, line by line, through your assumptions, emotions, and beliefs? This isn't about metaphor, it's about mechanics, the mechanics of consciousness. For most people, life seems to be a sequence of random events, things happening to them, circumstances they react to, and opportunities they either get or miss. But what if the entire structure of what we call reality isn't something external at all? What if it's a reflection of an internal script you're constantly running, whether you know it or not? Neville Goddard once said, "Man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness." That is the starting point. Reality is not built from matter. It is built from perception. Perception shaped by the assumptions you hold and the emotions you energize. You are not here to chase outcomes or attract results. You are here to become so inwardly convinced of your desired state that the world outside must conform to it. Your imagination isn't a place to escape life. It is the mechanism by which life is formed. The screen of your world is a mirror, reflecting not just your thoughts but your felt convictions. The images you hold with emotional certainty are like lines of code written into the fabric of experience. You don't beg life to give you what you want. You accept that it already is. And life, like a faithful servant, follows the assumption. This isn't speculation. It's how reality functions when you remove the mask of appearances. You assume, you feel, you believe, and what you call the outside world responds. Not because it's judging or rewarding you, but because it's you, pushed out. Neville said it plainly. The world is yourself pushed out. Everything you see is your consciousness externalized. The question isn't whether you're manifesting. You always are. The real question is, what are you assuming is true right now, and how has that assumption shaped the life you're calling real? If you can accept, even briefly, that reality is a reflection of you, not something separate from you, then you've already taken back creative control, not by force, not by effort, but by awareness, because nothing changes until you do, but the moment you do, everything does. If reality mirrors your assumptions, what are you unknowingly affirming right now? Check the pinned comment. It reveals a deeper layer to help you shift the script consciously. Reality is a mental construct. Most people believe reality is something solid, something fixed, made of concrete and laws, untouchable by the mind. But this is one of the greatest misunderstandings of the human experience. What we call reality is not a structure built from matter. It is a projection shaped by the one perceiving it. It is not objective. It is filtered, selected, interpreted. It changes according to the state of consciousness from which it is observed. You are not living in a world of things. You are living in a world of assumptions appearing as things. Everything you encounter, every person, every event, every situation is wearing the mask of your internal state. If your dominant feeling is lack, life will appear to echo that. If you consistently dwell in the assumption of abundance, opportunities begin to form where before there were only obstacles. The world is not deciding. You are. Neville said, consciousness is the one and only reality, not figuratively but actually. This is not an abstract spiritual idea. It means the foundation of your experience is not matter, but mind. The quality of your consciousness is the blueprint for your entire world. Think of your consciousness like a slide projector. Whatever image is placed into it is what appears on the screen. The screen itself, what you call the world, has no power to change what's being shown. It only reflects. So when you try to change your life by changing people, chasing success, rearranging outer conditions, you are rearranging the reflection, not the source. The image inside the projector remains, and so, the pattern repeats. Different face, same dynamic, more money, same fear, new relationship, same argument. Why? Because the state of being, the inner code, was never changed. The moment you become conscious of this truth, you hold the key. You realize that your assumptions are not reactions to reality, but instructions given to it. Every time you say, "I never get what I want," or "things always work out for me," you are submitting code. The subconscious mind, indifferent to what is good or bad, simply accepts the command and prints it into form. Now ask yourself, what do I believe about money, about love, about health, about who I am? Do these beliefs support the life I say I want, or are they silently writing a script I'm tired of living? The mirror never lies. It only reflects. When you shift your internal state, your assumption of truth, the mirror has no choice. It must show you what you now are, not what you hope to be, what you are. And what you are in this moment is determined by the thoughts you accept, the feelings you dwell in, and the identity you occupy. You are not here to observe the world as it is. You are here to know that the world bends to what you assume yourself to be. For centuries, science described reality as a machine, objective, external, and unaffected by the observer. But with the rise of quantum physics, that picture cracked. At the subatomic level, the rules change. The world no longer behaves like a fixed structure. It behaves like a suggestion. And the moment you observe it, that suggestion becomes a choice. The double-slit experiment is one of the most revealing discoveries in modern science. When particles are not being watched, they act like waves, spreading out, existing in multiple possibilities. But when those same particles are observed, they collapse into a single location. They behave like particles. In other words, the act of observing changes what is observed. The observer is not separate from the experiment. The observer is part of the outcome. This is not a philosophical idea. It's a measurable effect. What does it mean for your life? It means your attention is creative, not just emotionally or metaphorically, but scientifically. Where you place your focus and the assumptions you hold while observing shape what materializes. You're not looking at a finished reality. You're collapsing infinite possibilities into a particular experience through what you believe to be true. Neville Goddard said, "Change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live." That isn't mystical, it's quantum. If consciousness causes reality to take form, then your conception of yourself determines what form it takes. Now consider this. If you view life through the lens of scarcity, failure, or fear, that's the frequency you are observing from. You are unconsciously collapsing probabilities into a pattern that matches your inner state. Not because life is against you, but because life is neutral. It reflects the observer. It becomes what you assume. This is why it's not enough to wish for a better life while feeling undeserving. You cannot observe abundance from the state of lack and expect a different outcome. The moment you feel the reality of your wish fulfilled, you become the observer who sees it. And through that observation, reality bends. Quantum physics is catching up to what the mystics and teachers like Neville have long declared. Reality does not exist independently of consciousness. Your thoughts and feelings are not reactions to reality. They are instructions that reality obeys. Long before quantum physics put words to the observer effect, ancient spiritual systems were already describing the world as illusion, a reflection, not a cause. The sages of India spoke of Maya, the great illusion, declaring that the world of form is not the source of truth but its shadow. In the Upanishads, you'll find the phrase Tat Tvamasi, thou art that. The implication is direct. The self is not separate from the whole. The observer and the universe are one. In Buddhist philosophy, form is empty and emptiness is form. What appears as solid and fixed is only momentary, shaped by mind, subject to change the moment the perceiver changes. Hermetic teachings state, as above, so below, as within, so without. This isn't poetic, it's instructional. It's a blueprint for creation. What you hold within consciousness must be echoed outward. It cannot do otherwise. Even Gnostic Christianity spoke this same truth in hidden language. The kingdom of heaven, said Jesus, is not coming with signs to be observed. The kingdom is within you. The outer world was never the true battleground. The true transformation happens within. And once that occurs, the outer conditions fall into line, not as a miracle but as a law. Neville Goddard understood this unity across teachings. He once wrote, "There is no fiction. All things exist in the human imagination." That statement alone dissolves centuries of superstition around external gods, cosmic rewards, and chance outcomes. There is no fiction because everything you can imagine already exists in potential. You are not here to earn your desires. You are here to awaken to your authorship. Throughout these ancient paths, the common thread is unmistakable. Consciousness is the origin. The world you see is a symbol, a reflection of the inner pattern. Your inner conversations, your silent beliefs, your deep emotional assumptions, all of these are rituals more powerful than any external practice. And every tradition that touched the heart of reality pointed in the same direction. Look inward. The world does not show you the truth. It shows you yourself. Not the surface self, not the mask, but the deep self, the one that speaks in feeling and assumption. When the Upanishads declare, all this is Brahman, they are not speaking of a distant deity. but the truth that everything is arising from one source, consciousness, and you are that. This isn't a poetic ideal. It is a function. The material world is not where the cause lives. It is where the effect is seen. The real work, the creative work, happens in the silence of your being. The question is no longer, what should I do? The question becomes, what am I accepting as true within myself? Because that is what the world will show you. Today, even the most advanced scientific and philosophical minds are beginning to propose what mystics have long suggested, that this world may be a simulation. Not in the science fiction sense of artificial computers and pixels, but in the deeper sense that reality behaves like a responsive system, governed not by random events but by codes, inputs, and intelligent feedback. In this model, belief is not just an attitude, it is the code. Your assumptions become commands and the world acts as a living interface responding to those commands. Nick Bostrom's simulation hypothesis suggests that if a civilization advances far enough to simulate consciousness, then the probability that we are already inside such a simulation becomes nearly certain. This may sound far-fetched, until you realize it aligns closely with Neville's core premise, that the world is not solid or fixed but dreamlike, flexible, and governed by the consciousness experiencing it. Neville said, "The drama of life is a psychological one and the whole of it is written and produced by your assumptions." The ego in this framework is simply the avatar, the programmed identity that plays the game of separation. It believes it is only the body, only the name, only the job title, the trauma, the personality. But this limited identity is not the one doing the coding. The true self is the observer behind the script, the awareness that chooses which state to occupy, and by that choice, which version of reality to render. In a simulated world, the one who writes the code controls the experience. The trouble begins when we mistake the character for the coder. When you forget that you are awareness itself, you begin reacting to the simulation instead of guiding it. You chase outcomes, compare your path to others, and assume life is happening to you. But in truth, it is responding to you. Neville often used the dream analogy. He said that just as you can create a world and populate it while dreaming, so too can you shape waking life through the same imaginative power. The ego resists this truth because it thrives on control through limitation. It says, "You can't have that," or "You must work harder," or "You're not worthy yet." But the self behind the ego, the awareness that is silently watching all of this, has no limits. It only believes the ones it accepts. Think of the world not as a place you're trapped in, but as a screen responding to internal choices. The quality of your assumption becomes the quality of your simulation. If you assume you're unwanted, the world reflects rejection. If you assume you're chosen, the world reflects confirmation. The ego tries to manipulate effects. The deeper self reprograms causes. And when you begin to notice the loop, to observe how the script mirrors your inner dialogue, you are no longer just playing the simulation. You are awake inside it, and that changes everything. In recent years, voices from fields once considered purely rational and empirical have begun to echo the same fundamental truth. Reality may not be what it seems. Philosophers like Nick Bostrom argue that the likelihood we are living in a base-level reality is extremely low. If even one advanced civilization can simulate conscious beings indistinguishable from biological ones, the odds shift. It becomes far more probable that what we are experiencing is already a simulation. Elon Musk has said that the chances we are not in a simulation are 1 in billions. This isn't idle speculation. It's a recognition that the pace of technological advancement, particularly in artificial intelligence and virtual reality, is making the concept not only plausible, but increasingly likely. If humans can already simulate entire environments and lifelike avatars, what might a civilization thousands of years ahead be capable of? These perspectives don't contradict spiritual teachings, they reinforce them. Neville Goddard taught that the imagination creates reality, that assumptions harden into fact. He didn't need computers or quantum code to validate this. He lived it. But now, science is catching up. The very idea that a system could respond to internal data, and that consciousness can shape what the system renders, is no longer exclusive to mysticism. It is emerging in labs, equations, and philosophical debates. This growing overlap between science and spirit reveals something powerful. It suggests that your beliefs are not just thoughts floating in your head, they are inputs. The subconscious mind functions as the interface between consciousness and what we call the material world. What you repeatedly impress upon it, with conviction and feeling, becomes the parameters of your experience. Theories of simulation, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing are not distant ideas anymore. They are pointing to the same structure described by sages and mystics throughout history, that you are not separate from reality. You are its source code in motion. And that changes how you must think about your life, not as a series of accidents or conditions to be endured, but as an editable script, waiting for the clarity of your assumption. The deeper we look into the nature of existence, the more the universe reveals itself not as a collection of separate parts, but as a unified field, where the whole is present in every fragment. David Bohm, one of the most respected theoretical physicists of the 20th century, proposed that the universe functions like a hologram. In a hologram, each part contains the image of the whole, cut it into smaller pieces, and each one still holds the full pattern, just in lower resolution. This view challenges the assumption that reality is local, separate, and linear. Instead, it suggests that everything is interconnected and non-local, meaning changes in one part can reflect instantly across the entire structure. Your inner world, your thoughts, feelings, assumptions, is not isolated. It is woven into the larger fabric of consciousness. Your change in awareness is not private. It affects the whole field of your experience. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a structural truth. Neville understood this long before science found the language to express it. He said, "There is no one to change but self." Why? Because the world is yourself pushed out. If reality is holographic, then the smallest change at your level of being ripples through the whole. Alter the pattern of thought, and the outer pattern must echo it. This idea also aligns with the fractal nature of existence. In fractals, the same geometric patterns repeat at different scales, from the arrangement of galaxies to the structure of neurons. Your consciousness is part of this recursive order. The beliefs you hold form patterns, and those patterns repeat across your relationships, finances, health, and self-concept. If the pattern remains unexamined, the experiences seem to repeat without cause. But once you recognize the structure, you gain the ability to change it at its root. The world is not random. It is patterned consciousness. You are not a spectator in a disconnected universe. You are a node of awareness shaping the fractal, with every assumption you accept as true. This is not a passive existence. It is a living feedback system, where the whole responds to the part. And the moment the part, the self, awakens to this truth, the whole begins to shift. Not gradually, but by law. Your emotions are not reactions to life. They are instructions to it. Each feeling you dwell in acts like a frequency, a signal sent into the field of consciousness, drawing experiences that match its tone. You are not simply thinking your world into being, you are feeling it into being. Neville Goddard said, "Feeling is the secret." He did not say thinking, hoping, or wishing. Feeling, because feeling is the state of being. It is what the subconscious accepts as truth. And once accepted, it begins to organize external reality to match the internal conviction. Imagine life as a feedback loop. Whatever state you occupy, whatever emotional tone you carry, loops back to you in the form of circumstances, events, and relationships. If you constantly feel anxious, life appears uncertain and unstable. If you dwell in anger, you notice more things to resist and resent. These are not coincidences. They are reflections. On the other hand, when you maintain the emotional frequency of gratitude, peace, or love, not as a performance but as a genuine inner state, your environment begins to take on those qualities. People respond differently. Solutions appear faster. The world becomes more cooperative, not because it changed first, but because you did. This is why attempts to change life without changing state are so often frustrating. You try to force outcomes from the wrong emotional position. You ask for abundance while feeling like you don't deserve it. You seek love while feeling unworthy. And the loop continues, reinforcing the very emotion that generated it. The subconscious does not respond to words alone. It responds to feeling. It doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. If you can generate the feeling of being secure, loved, or successful now, regardless of appearances, then the reality that matches that feeling begins to form. It has no choice. This is not personal. It is structural. Like tuning a radio. If you're on the frequency of lack, you receive content from that station. If you change the dial, the content changes. Not because the station improved, but because you shifted to another one. Your emotional baseline is your personal frequency. It sets the tone for your experience. The question is not whether you are broadcasting. The question is, what station are you tuned to, and are you willing to shift it, even before the world gives you permission? Because once the feeling shifts, the loop begins to return something new. Not as a reward, but as a reflection. One of the most overlooked keys to rewriting the simulation is non-reaction. To master the game, you must stop taking the screen at face value. Reality is not presenting you with facts. It is presenting you with reflections. When you react emotionally to the appearance of things, you reinforce the very pattern you wish to dissolve. Neville Goddard spoke often of inner stillness. He knew that the power to shift reality does not come through effort or resistance, but through controlled attention. He said, "Be still and know that you are. Not become. Not try. Know that you are." This stillness is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the refusal to give energy to appearances that contradict your desired state. The simulation runs on feedback. The more you identify with what is happening around you, the more you loop within the same level of experience. But when you begin to observe instead of react, when you hold to your inner assumption in the face of contrary evidence, you cause the structure to reconfigure. Just like a lucid dreamer who realizes the dream is not real and gains the ability to reshape it, you too can reshape what you see by remaining loyal to your inner vision. Reaction is identification with the false self. The moment you get pulled into defending, explaining, or emotionally battling circumstances, you have forgotten your authorship. You are no longer coding. You are following someone else's script. Non-reaction is not denial. It is recognition. It is saying, "This appearance is not final. It is a residue of my previous state, and I am no longer that." By choosing stillness over reaction, you interrupt the loop. You stop energizing what no longer belongs to you. And in that pause, you give your new state the space to take form. Not slowly, but faithfully. Because reality responds not to noise, but to the quiet certainty of one who knows they are the dreamer, not the dream. The subconscious mind is the builder of your world, not through logic, not through conscious intention alone, but through what you deeply and consistently accept as true. It is impressionable, responsive, and entirely obedient. It does not evaluate. It receives. And what it receives most readily is feeling. Neville Goddard made this unmistakably clear. The subconscious is not selective. It is impersonal. It accepts what is impressed upon it or what you consciously believe. This is why affirmations spoken without belief often fail to produce change. The words may be correct, but the emotional charge behind them contradicts the message. The subconscious listens to the tone beneath the sentence, not the sentence itself. If you say, "I am wealthy," but feel anxious and undeserving, the subconscious takes its cue from the feeling, not the phrase. The result is a life that reflects the hidden belief, not the spoken desire. This is why repetition alone is not enough. Repetition must be saturated with emotion, with conviction, with the full sensory experience of the assumption being real. Techniques like SATS, state akin to sleep, exist for this very reason. In the drowsy borderland between waking and sleep, the conscious mind relaxes, and the subconscious becomes more receptive. This is the ideal time to impress new images, new assumptions, new scenes. But even during the day, you are always programming. Through your inner conversations, your reactions, your imagined dialogues and endings, you are issuing commands. Nothing in your outer world can override a belief you continue to feed. Circumstances may shift temporarily, but unless the underlying assumption changes, the old pattern will return. To program the subconscious is to take responsibility for the emotional and imaginal diet you live on. What are you rehearsing inwardly? What conclusions are you affirming, silently and consistently? The power is not in wishing or waiting. It is in the decision to embody a new assumption, so completely, so naturally, that the subconscious has no reason to doubt. It accepts, and once accepted, the world reshapes. Not because it heard your words, but because it received your feeling. Time is a mental construct. Time, as most understand it, appears linear, a past that leads to a present, and a present unfolding into a future. But this model is not how consciousness operates. Time, at its root, is not a flow. It is a framework, a method the mind uses to organize experience. It is not a force moving life forward, but a mental lens that selects events out of a vast field of potential. Neville Goddard stated, The future must become the present in the imagination of the one who would wisely and consciously create circumstances. This means that what we call the future already exists, not as fate, but as possibility. It is already there, waiting for selection, and what selects it is not effort, or time, or action. What selects it is state. Every conceivable version of your life already exists, not in some distant tomorrow, but as potentialities waiting to be observed. When you assume a new state, when you occupy the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are not waiting for something to arrive. You are stepping into a different timeline, one in which that assumption is already fact. This is why change can appear sudden, not because reality changed gradually, but because consciousness moved. The old state collapsed and a new one took its place, and with it came new experiences, new people, new outcomes, aligned with the new selection. The linear sense of time is useful for measuring but misleading for manifesting. If you see your desire as something distant, you reinforce the gap. If you feel it as present, you collapse the delay. The subconscious does not wait for clocks. It responds to what you accept now. To live in the end, as Neville taught, is to step beyond time, to select your future from within and claim it now, not as a possibility but as a fact of consciousness. And consciousness, being the only reality, will make it so. To live deliberately, you must stop reacting and begin selecting. Neville Goddard taught that your reality is shaped not by effort, but by assumption. What you accept as true, especially when felt deeply, is impressed upon the subconscious and externalized as experience. The key is not to fight appearances, but to replace the state from which they arise. Each morning decide who you are, not who you hope to become, but who you are now. Let this assumption guide your inner dialogue, emotional tone, and mental imagery. Speak to yourself as the one who already has the result. Think from it, not of it. Before sleep, enter the drowsy state and imagine a short scene that implies your wish fulfilled. Feel it real, make it ordinary. Let the scene replay until it feels natural, then drift into sleep knowing you've issued the command. When old patterns reappear, don't react. Recognize them as residual echoes of a former state. Return quietly to the new assumption. The subconscious doesn't respond to force, it responds to feeling accepted as fact. Reality conforms, not when you strive, but when you dwell in the end with conviction. That is how you code your world. Conclusion: you are the coder. You are not here to chase outcomes, to beg reality for change, or to wait for external permission. You are the one who gives the command. You are the source of the script, the observer behind the appearance, the coder within the simulation. Everything you see is shaped by what you believe yourself to be, and everything you assume with feeling becomes the world you meet. Neville Goddard made it clear, you do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. The world responds not to passing wishes but to stable assumptions. To the inner identity you return to moment by moment. That is the signal, that is the code, and life, without resistance, renders it into form. This is why nothing changes until you do. But the moment you do, everything does. Because the world is not deciding your fate. You are. So pause and consider, what role have you been playing without knowing? What truths have you been living by simply because you never questioned them? And who would you be right now if you believed it was already yours? There is no outside authority deciding what you can have, do, or become. Only consciousness. And your consciousness, felt, accepted, assumed, is the root of it all. The screen of life is not projecting onto you, it is reflecting from you. If this stirred something in you, if a deeper part of you feels ready to step beyond the surface and remember what you already are, then check the pinned comment. Don't overlook it. There's something there, meant for those who are no longer satisfied with waiting, those who feel the pull to live from a different place, not later, now. Because reality doesn't hold the power, you do.